Welcome to the Three Bros Podcast, episode 27. Everybody is here for the first time in a few weeks, at least since I've tried to legitimize and post. There you go.
Big moment.
So I'll go ahead and start it because I was the one that asked this question earlier. Well, not even the question, but when I see headlines, and I think that the administration reversed position a couple of days later, when I see headlines that Trump says that he wants to sit down face to face with Kim Jong-un. It's not that I necessarily think that's a bad idea right away. I immediately question what the end game is. So for me, when I hear, because we all talk about a lot of times here on this pod, like how mainstream media will react to things or how different factions of society will react to things. I think a lot of mainstream media, at least from my vantage point, was like, well, you might legitimize the leader. And I don't know that that's my first question that I ask when I see it. The first question I ask is like, what's the end game? So I think a variable is maybe you would legitimize him and that doesn't help the end game. But if the end game is to, because we have to keep in context and we can't forget that the whole reason the whole Korea situation started is because we had a position as a country back in the 50s. We weren't going to let communism spread, period. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying we instigated it, but we definitely threw our weight into an area of the world far away from us because we wanted to control something that we viewed as an evil, which I don't disagree with, obviously. I just, keeping that in context, how does him sitting down with him help at all? And what is the end goal? Because the end goal should be, I think, especially from that administration, the end goal should be to have a unified Korea that isn't communist at all. And so if the president of the United States sits down with a communist leader, you know what I'm saying? Like, are they now going to recognize the fact that they're a country and that they should exist the way they are? Because
let's pause and let's go back a little farther to your initial thing, and that was, does this legitimize North Korea or Kim Jong-un? Mm-hmm. And we need to sit here and be honest with ourselves and say, if in fact, which it seems like they do, have nuclear weapons, they've legitimized themselves, period. So I don't think Trump sitting down with them in any way, shape, or form, legitimizes something it's been there for a long time. So I don't think he has an impact there. I think the end goal, hopefully, would be to, slow down the nuclear program, and let's at least try to potentially get aid to the millions of starving people in North Korea.
Yeah, because it is pretty bad. It is pretty bad in North Korea. In terms of just a humanitarian perspective, it's
but
it's one of the worst in the world.
Yeah. If I was president, I would be solely focused on the safety of my country and my people, and I just wouldn't be too concerned about anything that happens after that. So I think the goal should be denuclearization. So it's actually a little bit of my position that, hey, maybe even if it somehow legitimizes them and that regime gets to keep living on, maybe if we can at least denuclearize them and keep ourselves safe, that's not the worst way to go, like.
Yeah, what are the chances though that North Korea just put so much time and effort into their nuclear program to put that on the table as a bargaining chip? Like, there's no way they've made this much progress and now they're willing to give it all up, surely.
Yeah, but at the same time, it might be at the point where he's like, oh, shit, I have a nuke. What's next?
Well, yeah, but
I'm not saying that they wouldn't. I mean, the whole point of developing the nuke is to be a superpower, is to be a world superpower, right? Mm-hmm. Well, and the next step in being a world superpower is what? Like, let's just keep going, right? I have a nuke. Well, I can shoot anybody in the world.
Yeah.
What's step 2?
So I don't know that they're even I don't know that that kind of regime even is thinking about a step 2, because step 2
beg to differ.
Well, step 2 would be what? Developing, your country, your economy, your infrastructure, right? Because you're a legitimized country. But if you're already communist and you treat half your population like garbage and you pick about 3% that are winners and everybody else is a loser, how can you really? I think we start delving into the realm of, well, now if you legitimize yourself and you really want to economically boom, look to South Korea and do what they did. You have to be capitalist. I don't really know that there'd be any other option.
Not necessarily. They make a ton of money through, slave labor.
And I know, and hang on. But not even being that sinister. I know that right now there's sanctions on them. So if they were lifted, yeah, I'm sure they'd be more productive, but they wouldn't be as productive as a capitalistic society. So
no, which is why I wonder why, if the conversation is, hey, you slow down on your nuclear development, we will give you aid.
Mm-hmm.
And in the back of the minds of the CIA and of military intelligence analysts and et cetera,
mm-hmm.
why don't we slip a few copies of, DVDs into fucking rice bags?
Oh, I'm sure they're already doing that.
They are, but the whole point, I think, would be to let's try and find a way to destabilize that regime.
Here's what concerns me about that, though, because it seems like
I'm not advocating for it. I just think that's right. If history tells us anything about the United States, that's what we're going to do. So continue from there.
Sure.
That's fair.
But to be fair, in terms of how the government's going to change there, it seems like it's going to take a large revolution for any sort of big changes to occur in North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with that, I think, is that the North Korean state clearly has nuclear weapons. Yeah. And if you have anarchy and if you have governments changing hands like that and you have nuclear missiles that suddenly go MIA, that's really bad. I think that's the biggest concern about all of this for me, is because obviously this regime has to end eventually, but what happens to the nuclear missiles when it does? I don't know. That's That's scary.
Look what happened with the Soviet Union. They didn't really go away. There was a power struggle for a decade, but then someone took hold, Putin. Now has basically made himself a new autocrat. Not necessarily a Stalin, or that they're communists like they were back in the day, but definitely an autocrat. And and now China. And by the way,
China
China
just did that. China just did that like yesterday.
So we'll see what happens.
They abolished presidential term limits, and now what's his name? President Xi is now basically the
guy.
President
for life.
Yeah, president for life. Amazing.
Yeah. Which is a way of putting lipstick or makeup on a pig, in my opinion. President for life just means, so that sounds like dictator, right?
Hey, so you're just a quasi-dictator, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, there's also I feel like potentially
it's more complicated than that, but
an argument to be had to have someone serve a longer quote unquote term, right? Whether it be the rest of their life or whether it be until they step down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, you look at our own country, we can barely get a direction worth of shit because every 4 years or 2 years, everything changes anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Not advocating in any way for a quasi-dictator. But there's some potential legitimacy to saying, look, I don't have enough time to implement what we need to implement.
There's something to be said for that, but power that always consolidates and just sits in a few hands, it always corrupts. I mean, time and time again, it corrupts.
Right. Well, what I'm saying, though, is that if you had let's use America for an example, right? Because that's obviously our familiarity. If it ran similar to ours, let's say you voted in a president that had either until they stepped down or until they died type of deal, or they had medical issues that they were not unable to serve, right? They were voted into office, but Congress, the Senate, the House, all that stuff would continue to change as normal. What difference do you think that would make, if at all, in our country?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's not entirely comparable because the president, quote unquote, of China has a lot more power and a lot more say.
And that may be the case. All I'm saying is I do get what you're saying. and put it into our system, there may be some legitimacy to doing something like that.
I mean, to some extent, the UK has that in terms of a figurehead. I mean, they have their queen, but I don't know.
Queen have any
not really
true political power?
I just don't think it's good. I think if history tells us anything, power should change hands. It forces people to play by the rules.
Yeah.
But I do get what you're saying, that when it changes hands too much, you can't really get anything done.
Right. So there has to be a delicate balance of time as opposed to changing hands.
Well, we're all aware that America kind of sucks at democracy, so.
Well, look, I mean, there's always, public pressure, which obviously isn't as good as one person wielding all the power. It's not going to be as quick, but, public pressure does a lot to move the needle. So,
yeah. Well, back to the beginning. The whole point of this conversation, though, was with specifically what is Trump doing with North Korea, and whether or not it will do anything in the long run.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily what's Trump doing. It's just should the leader of our country at any point.
Can I just?
Down.
Well, you hit a point where somebody has a legitimate nuclear threat. That you got to do something. Can
I just say that no U.S. sitting president has ever met with a North Korean dictator, and it had to be Trump.
Well, let's go back.
Well, they walked it back. He's not a man of tact.
Madeleine Albright went there.
Huh?
Madeleine Albright, she went there.
I don't know who that is.
Well, there's a big difference between Madeleine Albright and the leader of the free world. So as far as legitimizing and
Secretary of the United States is pretty high up there.
She was Secretary of State. That's true. Did she go when she was Secretary of State? That's fair. That's true.
Yep. She brought a basketball signed by, I think, Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls team, because Kim Jong, who's before this one?
So that's
legitimizing.
It was in. Yeah, you're right. It was late in the Clinton era.
Right.
Well, but dude, we're talking about the president. We're talking about.
I get you, but the Secretary of State answers to the president. Like that, you can't get much closer than that. Is my point.
Well, my point is there are plenty of better presidents to have sat down.
Well, hey, listen.
We
as a country decided that this would be our leader.
Yeah, right. And that's why I'm not interested in talking about him. I'm interested in talking about what that might do for that. Well, it's going to be a
very big factor. It's literally Donald Trump having a conversation.
I get that. I understand.
That's the idea of this thing.
And look, we can have a conversation about that. We can. I also
want to remind you guys.
He's so outside the norm.
That there's another. I feel like there's another factor here, and that is, should Dennis Rodman go with Trump?
God, Jesus Christ,
bro! Kim Jong-un and Dennis Rodman are boys.
A bad idea, dude.
They're boys. They're good.
What a weird world we're in. That Donald Trump and Dennis Rodman are our. Well, look. Oh, good.
They are the United States envoy to North Korea.
Oh my God.
Well, Dennis Rodman also went over there before all this, I don't want to call it thawing, but all this, talk started up about, hey, let's chat and blah, blah, blah.
No.
So, I don't know. Well, and what I mean by that is I don't know if that's Kim Jong-un just trying to, stick it in the president's face by inviting a basketball player, because this was during the Obama years, by inviting a basketball player over. I don't know.
At the same time, I think legit Kim Jong-un is a hardcore late 90s Bulls fan. That's not a joke. Did you guys see the Vice doc on it?
Is he? Okay, well then there you go.
You guys got to watch it.
You definitely told me about it, but I've not had the chance yet.
It's a must watch. The farther we get into having to talk about Kim Jong-un,
so then maybe
gives you a tiny light into that world.
I've definitely seen. Yeah. I saw the Vice documentary on the slave trade, or not the slave trade, but kind of the slave trade.
I mean, it's kind of which one? The one in Russia or the one in Poland?
The one in Russia. The one in Russia, where they? Oh no, I think it was one in Poland. Oh, you're right. I think there was the one in Poland.
Yeah.
They just sell their labor and yeah. Well, I don't know if it's slave. I think they get peanuts, but it's almost slave trade.
I guess apples to apples. To me, it's still slave.
Right. Well, yeah. Especially if it's way below a livable wage, which.
Well, not only is it way below a livable wage, right? You're going there to work on behalf of a country, or on behalf of whoever quote unquote owns you.
Right. So
they don't directly say we own your ass, but at the same time.
So and these all play a factor into what we were discussing. Like and Caleb brought this up. He's right. All these things play towards legitimizing. And by the way, the fact that they've been around for 60, 70 years now, that legitimizes them in a way too. So
yeah,
I think you just accept the fact that they're there as far as being a communist state and just try to make sure that they are not nuclearized, in a way that's threatening to Americans. And as long as you do that, then I don't worry about what the rest of it entails. South Korea and North Korea can figure that out on their own. I tend to lean more towards let's not be a police state. I think that's not entirely black and white and not entirely realistic, but I do tend to lean that way. And so I think there's a way to.
At the same time, though, Cyril, when you're talking about like a police state, you are indirectly caring for Americans, right? By quelling a potential war with North and South Korea, you're protecting Americans and American interests, right? Same thing with Israel and Palestine, right? By attempting to do something in there, which every president since forever has always tried to do,
right.
Except for Trump is like strongly like, nope, we're pro-Israel, no question about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the issue of denuclearization, let's throw in Israel, Pakistan, and India too.
Yep.
Well, and it's a good segue to, and I know none of us can speak really well to this. Well, I don't want to speak for you guys too much, but I know I can't. The issue of moving the embassy to Jerusalem.
That's another. Yeah,
I can't speak to whether it's helpful or not. And especially you just have to wait and see in the long run. But I do know that it seems weird the amount of unbridled praise that Israel and specifically Netanyahu will lavish on Trump, and the amount of just disdain and grenade throwing and basically telling Trump this is not helping by the other side. And when it's so drastically different on each side, I can't help but think it wasn't a net positive to do what he did. I don't know. Netanyahu, and I hate to say Netanyahu, I don't hate to say it. Netanyahu was there a week ago. I don't know if you guys saw their brief press conference. Netanyahu basically lobs on Trump's knob. And that seems really weird to me. And that friendliness seems very weird to me. And the unfriendliness towards the other side, and also the Muslim ban and just the general hostility towards Muslims, just makes me think that this move probably was in the interest of Trump's, I'm a Christian and I don't really like Muslims too much, and I'm kind of a hateful person towards them, and amongst other peoples too. But it just feels like, like I said, I don't know if it was a good idea or not. You have to wait and see, but it just feels like it doesn't make sense. That's all. So,
that's a tough one, and you're right. Yeah, I cannot speak.
Yeah, that's
nearly as intelligently as to the situation. Right. What I can say though is that I think ultimately this is all about playing to the base.
Yes,
for Trump.
That feels right.
That's what it feels like to me. And to say that Netanyahu is schlobbing on knob there, I can't fault him for it, because that's what I would be doing.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. And a lot of leaders have done that. So that's not wrong.
Well, it's Trump responds to banter like that. That's why leaders praise him. That's why, he got a red carpet treatment in China, I'm pretty sure, for his trip.
Right. He can
leaders
live in
pander because they know he loves it.
But why? But usually they could care less, right? Even if they know he loves it, why does it actually matter? Or why do they actually follow through with it? It's because America is still the most powerful country, the richest country, and plays the biggest role in a lot of things. And it's just, you want to be on their good side. You do. It's even to this day. And so I don't think they could care less about, being on Trump's good side. The reason why they do care is because you want to be on America's good side.
Well, being on Trump's good side is being
on America's good side.
Yeah,
correct. Yeah.
Because he's the one that has.
No, you're absolutely right.
Well,
all right. The last thing that we wanted to talk about was the Tyrod Taylor trade. And So I think, and I was actually talking to some people at work about this on Friday, and I do live in Buffalo, so it's, I hear things from time to time. They were saying that they thought that the Bills would get more for Tyrod, which I don't. I think they got the first pick in the third round is a solid. That's a solidly high pick for the NFL draft. Like that's pretty good value. And you give Tyrod 3 years to start for the team. They made it to the playoffs last year. Sure, they kind of backed in though. Tyrod didn't play bad. Don't get me wrong. He's never turning the ball over, and he's overall a solid quarterback. But
ultimately we won. We got to the playoffs, and yes, we even backed into the playoffs. But by virtue of our defense early in the season, we had a lot of wins via our defense early in the season.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't personally really credit Tyrod with getting us in.
And that's a part of what blew me away on Friday when I'm talking to some of my friends and they're saying, "Oh, I think we could have gotten more for Tyrod." I'm like, really? Like, I don't really know what else you would have gotten.
First of all, the Browns, I'm pretty sure, are the only team in the league that would have
taken
traded for Tyrod. So whatever value you're getting is specifically because you're trading with the only team, which means you get value regardless because nobody else would have traded for him. And if really your goal was clearing that $10 million cap space for free agency or for whatever,
which is helpful,
you were successful.
Right.
And on top of that, the Bills are sitting on 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 thirds now, right?
And that's a lot of speculation that they're going to trade up for a quarterback. So,
which
I don't know. We'll see. I don't necessarily think they need to do. The draft is rich with quarterbacks. I know that they're all projected to go pretty high. I'll check the mock drafts right now, but
they use those picks to beef up everything else because there's a kid next year they like.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Let's get some offensive linemen. Right. Kyle Williams is going to go away. We're going to need a defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Right? Let's get these pieces in place before you have the quarterback, not after.
And we just had that discussion. That we kind of. I don't want to say we backed in. That's a little. I don't want to disrespect the team that I do love, but they weren't necessarily a playoff team. They kind of snuck in there. So, and that was not a credit necessarily to Tyrod. So getting rid of him and maybe even waiting till next year and bolstering your team might even get you to sneak in again with an average quarterback. So,
so the question is,
so yeah, that's fine. I wouldn't. Yeah.
The question is then, who's at the helm next year? If that's your strategy,
you still have to take a quarterback. You just don't have to trade up or take so drastically early, and then you can just have whoever you take compete with. Yeah.
Or you take a risk, you gamble, you go after a Case Keenum or a Teddy Bridgewater. You see what you can get.
I'm okay with that. I thought you were going to say
Teddy Bridgewater.
I would not be okay with that. Yeah.
We were all thinking, oh my God, like Aaron Rodgers has a real competition in the NFC North now when he was playing.
Yeah, sure. They won the division when he started 1 year. Yeah.
Or you can go get AJ McCarron. He's out there too.
Yeah, you could. AJ McCarron's not. I mean, if you're doing what you're saying, which is not trade up, build, and then. But if you're gonna play well next year, are you really gonna be high enough to draft a good quarterback? I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of these mock drafts think that the Bills might flip their first 2-round picks into the Oakland Raiders' first-round pick at number 10 and take Baker Mayfield, which I'd be okay with.
Or they do the opposite.
Sure.
They trade out of their first 2 rounds for earlier first rounds next year. Problem is that the NFL is a win now league. So if you're not winning now, your ass is going to get fired.
True.
That's the
We've seen that time and time again. Yeah.
Like I've seen so much like everyone's praising the Browns right now, but then at the same time I see a lot of people being like, yeah, but they couldn't have done that without the last GM who stockpiled all those picks.
Sure.
It would not have been able to do any of that, and he was just shit canned. Why is he shit canned? Well, because they're not winning. Well, if they would have let potentially this guy's plan play out, he would have been able to make all these moves and been praised gloriously for the same thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the shit show that is the NFL sometimes.
Yeah. Actually, if you guys don't mind, there is one more thing that I'd love to bring up.
Sure.
I just thought of this. So I don't know if you knew that Trump went to a rally in Pennsylvania yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of hinted. I don't know the specific language, but basically said, I spoke to the Chinese president, and he said they don't have a drug problem. And I asked him, well, why don't you have a drug problem? And the Chinese president said, death penalty. And I said, well, maybe we should start thinking about that over here for drug dealers. Basically said,
no,
should
he did.
He did. Basically said,
all right,
he didn't say we will. Yeah, go ahead. I encourage you to, because it blew my mind this morning. Basically said, hey, maybe we should start thinking. And by the way, I'm wording this the way I am because it matters. He didn't say let's do that. He said, maybe we should. And you know how he is at rallies. Maybe he's just BSing. He does just shoot from the hip a lot. It's not helpful, by the way, but yes, we can still say that he shoots from the hip.
He shoots from the hip a lot.
He does, and he basically said, so maybe, it's not going to happen. I hope it's not going to happen. He basically said drug dealers should just get the death penalty, and maybe that'll solve our drug problem.
So much different crimes that would necessitate the death penalty, in my opinion.
Yeah. And also, I saw someone argue
pedophilia,
right. And I also saw someone argue too. I don't know. I saw someone argue, do we really need to have this conversation again? Especially after last week. I don't know if you guys saw this either. Once again, he does this thing where he doesn't 100% blame it or pin it to something, because then nobody will say, oh, he definitively said this. But he basically was saying that video games causes school violence.
I know. I saw this.
And it's just like, dude, are we living in the 80s? Are we doing this?
Are we living in the early 2000s?
90s, whatever the fuck.
Marilyn Manson and Eminem are bad because they cause violence.
Right.
It was 99 after Columbine.
Yep.
All of that stuff came out. Yeah. Video games.
Not blame anything else. Let's blame video games.
So let's remove the Trump factor, because I really don't. I hate talking about it from the Trump factor. And let's just go from this factor. Do we think that would be any kind of helpful? I'm pretty sure we all agree that maybe it wouldn't be helpful really that much. But does anybody think that it would even be slightly helpful to kill drug dealers? No, I don't think so.
People are going to consume drugs. Sure.
And we could do. Silly thought.
Yeah.
Legalize drugs.
Mind blown.
I don't even know that I agree with that. I think that we should decriminalize. Well, I think that we should decriminalize drugs and create a system where you either stay in the shadows and use, or if you want help, we'll help you. We're not going to throw you in jail if you're a user. I think you decriminalize users. You still to some extent criminalize dealers, because you can't just let people deal in a black market freely.
I say
you legalize it.
You legalize,
you have FDA approvals on products.
Yeah. Legalize lesser drugs
marijuana.
Legalize
marijuana should be legal. Right? Marijuana should be legal.
But then you can decriminalize things like methamphetamine and heroin, so you can actually help those people instead of just
that's what I'm
treating
saying.
them like criminals.
Don't get me wrong, marijuana should be legal.
If you have an FDA approval, right? Hey, this is just methamphetamine, not fentanyl laced with rat poison.
Right, it's safer.
Yeah, there is something to be said about that. Fentanyl has completely devastated opioid communities, because it's just seeping into their supply now. People are ODing on this shit so easily.
Yep. Before we wrap up, Chad, did you try to fact check that? Because I want it fact checked. I want someone.
I was watching the video while you were talking for a minute. Hang on, let me finish it.
Because that is something that is so incendiary that it should be secondary fact check. Because I don't want to just be spouting things off that. But he said it, man. Not black and white, but he definitely said maybe we should think about that.
And here's the thing. I mean, of course, you always have to consider the fact that unfortunately with this administration, things are shot from the hip a lot. But he does come off as very sincere when he says, listen, drug dealers are destroying families. They're destroying communities.
True.
They're going to think twice if there's a death penalty for drug dealers. And that's a terrible idea. That is such a bad idea.
Of course it is. But I don't know that. Yeah, I guess.
I would say don't take him seriously because
it's really
obviously
hard.
that's not going to happen. But yeah, that's very.
No, he's not. It's not going to happen.
That's inflammatory.
I would like to go back. Actually, I find this fascinating that Cyril is not for the legalization of like drugs. Period. At some point, maybe not now, but at some point, I would like to go over that because that I thought you would have been.
He did say marijuana.
So
Right.
I don't
I think
know.
Chad and I are speaking more so for like other drugs as well.
Yeah.
Not just marijuana, but like you know.
I think that I think that you can't look when you said what you said, if you can super regulate it and legalize it,
that's what you have to do to legalize it, right?
I don't know that sounds like a bad idea, but then I think about like you're really going to have like heroin shops. Is that what you're going to do? Even if you did have, hang on. Even if you did, no, I'm not saying you would. I'm just saying, is that what people would do? They would go to these shops. And even if we did build these shops, would that be really helping the people pull themselves out of their addiction if they want to? Because they're still going to be ostracized from society. Heroin is a pretty life-damaging drug. You can't be functional.
That's a pretty consuming drug, I would say.
Correct. So you're still not going to be functioning in a positive way. And so if we're just letting people get away with, regardless of why, maybe they're rich, maybe they have some sort of money flow from somewhere, if we're just letting people get away with just being able to sit around and do nothing, and we're not at least trying to help them when they want to raise their hand, because a lot of time I would say most of these people eventually you say like, hey, if someone would help me and pay for me to go to rehab, I'll take the opportunity. I want to be sure that we're ready to help people when they're ready to do that. I don't want to force people into rehab. No, that's not going to work. But I think we can decriminalize it, make sure that dealers are punished, not that harshly, but in a way that, hey, we were trying to like make sure that people aren't running rampant with this underground market, but also make sure that users aren't getting thrown in jail, less people in jail. And when they raise their hand saying, hey, I need help, this is really not, like, because Chad's right, people will always use. And so what can we do to get them to not? We need to be ready to help them. I don't know if we let them just use, I think it boils down to, and Caleb, I'll let you go right after this. I think what it boils down to is you either agree that people should be able to throw their lives away, and you say they should have the freedom to do that, which is fair because that is freedom. Or you come down and say like, hey, is there a way we can help them? And I'm always trying, not that it would work, but yeah. So.
Well, and here comes the weird argument, right? And I've wrestled with this myself for a long time is why not overtax the living bejesus out of it so that we can afford to send more people to rehab, so that we can afford to have more education on what drugs do to your body, et cetera, et cetera.
You wouldn't even need to overtax. Like a proper tax on it would pay for a lot of those things.
I think Did I say overtax?
Yeah. Just tax. Just tax. Well, but you're right. I guess
ultimately my point is, and I know it sounds like, because some people would argue and be like, well, why would you tax it when you can just make it illegal? But like, I guess my argument now at this point is, well, being illegal isn't really working.
Clearly.
It's not. Yeah, I agree with that.
It clearly has not worked.
So why not? Let's go down this legal route.
Threatening jail time for users doesn't help. It doesn't.
For users.
I agree with that. Correct.
For non-violent
users, yes.
Like, I don't understand that. Like, we absolutely... Right. It is amazing to me that we have more people in jail in the United States... than certain countries with bigger populations than us. We have so many people incarcerated.
We're the largest, right?
We are the largest by far, like farther than.
Probably fact check that, but
I'm 90% sure. A good portion of it is people who deal and people who are violent, and they do so because they're looking to score for drugs or this or that, and they should be in jail. But also a big portion of it is people who are just users, and they really shouldn't be there. If they're non-violent users, they just shouldn't be in jail. These people, I'm not going to sit here and say they have like, a lot of people these days think that, oh, maybe it's, an actual disease, which it could be. I'm just not a scientist or a doctor, so I can't really say, but it's definitely not helping threatening these people. Right. And if it is a disease or even if it isn't a disease, we need to go in a different direction because it's not helping.
It's not helping, and it's clearly not working. Like there's only so long that a problem can be this obvious before you say, okay, what we're doing right now isn't working. We need to try a drastically different approach.
Well, I don't even know if it's that drastic. I mean, it doesn't have to be a drastic approach to solve a problem. It just needs to be a different one.
Yeah. Right.
Look, I think step one probably is decriminalizing, right? And step two is if that still doesn't work.
When I say
it takes baby steps. Yeah, I agree.
When I say drastic, I keep in mind that like marijuana is still a Schedule I drug. So I mean drastic in terms of attitudes in the government need to be way different.
Yeah, that's so stupid.
It's almost unapproachable.
Yeah, that's really dumb. For sure. I could see a system in where you legalized and you would have these like shops for heavy drugs, right? So if you were a heavy drug user, you'd go to this like regulated, maybe even because it's a heavy drug, we can't really let the private market hang on to that. Probably have these like government operated or nonprofit operated entities where they would facilitate. And I could see that existing. These people would still be ostracized, but the helpful thing even might be, if you think about it, educating them before they purchase every time, saying, we will sell you this, needles. But sitting, well, not even that, but we will sell you this. Whoa. Of course, clean needles, but we will sell you this, but we're going to sit you down for 10 minutes and tell you how there's a ton of opportunities for whenever you're ready to find help. Right. And making sure that you understand the risks and making sure that you know that there's overdose risks and blah, 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 this and that. Yeah. So I could see that happening, and that would be.
So in Canada,
cool. So,
land of the maple syrup. Actually. I thought it was Vancouver. I know Vancouver for sure. It may be in other places of Canada, but in Vancouver, regardless of where you score, whatever it is, your drug of choice, you can actually go to a government-sponsored facility, and they will give you clean needles and a place to do your drug, essentially, and just be in a room so that you're not disturbing anybody. You know what I mean? But before they do that, you get all these packets and this information on like how to get clean and where to go, and here, if you want to get clean, we'll help you, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, like that's along this. I feel like a similar line as to what Cyril is saying there.
No, that's
and if I'm not mistaken, by the way, they're doing that in Ithaca.
And
oh really?
There's a lot of universities there, so maybe there's like studies that they're doing and.
Ithaca as a community has a very bad problem, a very bad relationship with opioid use. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
More of a rural. It's not a rural city. That doesn't make sense. That's an oxymoron. But you know what I'm saying? Like it's more of a
community
flyover city almost.
Right. So, yeah.
I have to find it. I'll have to cite that one. But I'm pretty sure Ithaca was starting a program similar to what Canada was doing, where, like, okay, listen, you've got your drugs. We're not going to ask you where you got them. We're not going to arrest you when you come in the building, but we are going to tell you where to get help, how to get help. Here's a clean needle. Go ahead and use, and then we'll let you go as soon as your high is over.
And I also think if you're going to take that approach, you have to be ready to see the same people over and over again before they're ready to raise their hand and accept 100%. Help. Because I feel like critics of it might say, well, you're trying, but it doesn't mean you're going to help them every time. Like, yeah, of course not. We have to be. We're just trying to be ready for when they're willing to get help, because you can't help someone until they're willing. Everybody knows that. I'm sorry, you can't. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I thought Cyril was going to be on the other side of the drug.
Yeah, that kind of surprised me as well.
That threw me for a curveball.
I thought we were all going to be on the same page there.
I think as I get older, I don't. And it's interesting because we look at curves of, I would say, how people grow and how they view and shape the world as they get older. I think most of the time people get more, let's call it conservative.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think as I get older, I just get more practical, right? So I'd love to listen. If you ask me what we could do in a utopia, yeah, let's legalize it, and everybody would be able to accept that, and everybody would say, okay, we're not going to ostracize these drug users just because we know that they're in pain and blah blah blah. But that's not reality. Like, people are going to ostracize these people, and I think I just always try to find the best way to actually help the people that need the help.
Sure.
I'm not interested in letting someone just have their freedom and sit around and be if they want to waste their life, I guess you want to argue they should have that freedom. That's fine. But I just want to try to help them as much as possible. So I think the most effective way there would be to just be ready to help users. And I don't know that just making it legal, and maybe making it legal with an education program. And like you said, with that Canada thing, that sounds pretty good. But just making it legal like alcohol is, you just go to the heroin store. Like that sounds ridiculous. That sounds ridiculous, and I don't.
You guys.
Right. Or even letting because the private market is great for a lot of things. Do not get me wrong, but I don't know that we should be profiteering off of people's addiction to substances. I think that's a really slippery slope.
I think, but to be fair,
like
I think
Budweiser.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but heroin is much different. That's apples and oranges. I think you can admit that.
No, it's not.
It's not apples and oranges.
Excuse
like
me, what?
How many?
Excuse me. Wait. Sure.
How many people do you think are addicted to several things? Right, drug users. How many drug users do you think are also alkies?
A lot of them.
So don't you think there's some kind of a connection there a little bit?
I do.
A little bit, maybe.
I do. I just.
And listen,
would.
I'm not saying that we should.
Sorry, you're suggesting it's a gateway drug?
But
no, suggesting that Budweiser is a gateway drug. Is that?
And if that's the case, that's fine. I was just saying specifically. Heroin will do a lot more damage to your productivity in your life than alcohol necessarily will on its own. So yes, if you want to say, oh, well, how many heroin users are also users of alcohol? Yeah, probably all of them. But, there's also a lot of people who drink and who are, quote unquote, addicted to it. Like a heroin user is addicted and they're fine. They're functional. I would say that I'm one. So
what do you think the likelihood, though, is that somebody who is an alcoholic but has never tried heroin, if they tried heroin or they tried some sort of drug, do you think they would become addicted to it?
I think there's a higher risk of them becoming addicted to it than someone who drank alcohol and didn't ever again because they didn't like it. Yes.
I think individuals have certain propensities to being addicted to something.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that doesn't necessarily.
I think that's genetic.
Right, but to me, that's not saying that, I pick up alcohol and that leads to heroin. That's saying I have a propensity to be addicted to these things in the first place.
Right. Yes. What I'm saying is,
I think a lot of people with, yeah.
I said, what is the likelihood? And I feel like it's a very high. Not that every single one is going to, but the likelihood is probably significant.
You also drew parallels between heroin and Budweiser.
And Budweiser.
And look, if you're trying to draw a parallel between just the addiction part of that, fine, you're not wrong. But what I'm trying to say, that wasn't the conversation I was trying to start. What I was trying to say was heroin is much more damaging to your productivity in your life than necessarily drinking does. That's what I'm saying. We want to talk about the addiction part of it.
I guess the argument there is also could be as well is when you do heroin, like you're fucking down and out, bud.
Correct.
Right. But when you consume alcohol at a rate that is very dangerous, like the likelihood of you potentially killing other people, though, with heroin, there's a difference for me at least.
All right. Yeah. So that's make alcohol illegal and legalize heroin like alcohol is currently.
And that has to do, I think, with biology.
No.
That has to do with actual practical, like what.
Yeah, I agree.
When we talk about going in withdrawal and depending on a substance, heroin is way different than alcohol.
Heroin,
100%.
So right, and
cultivates an addiction.
Alcohol
does,
too, that context matters. So heroin is such a powerful force that it might cause you to do violence or theft, whereas alcohol is definitely addictive, but in some way, in some biologically responsive way, doesn't drive you to such extremes as much. So.
Well,
it's complicated, so it always is.
Rough, yeah. Wow.
It's always complicated.
Well, from North Korea to heroin, I think.
There you go. Yeah, we can wrap it up.
I think that's A to Z right there.
Is it though?
That was a solid conversation, though.
No, it's good.
Yeah.